I got the invitation to go on this Armed Lutheran radio show, though. You know this guy? Have you seen this? There's two things that I would like to say that make me feel safe. Number one, the fact that there is a radio show called the Armed Lutheran Podcast somewhere in the world. That makes me feel safe.
Bringing you law, gospel, and guns. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Armed Lutheran Radio, a show about guns, hunting, competitive shooting, the natural right of self-defense, and what God's Word says about the issues surrounding... I just thought I would try to say that as quickly as I could, and I failed. Horribly. It's a show about guns and hunting and competitive shooting and all those great things, and most importantly, what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun rights and gun ownership. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran. This is episode number 465. Running a little late this week. Didn't get a show out on Sunday. I apologize for that. It has been kind of crazy, as it always seems to be. Happy Reformation Day, by the way. For those of you, Reformation Day will have just come and gone by the time you hear this. So, happy no longer bowing to the Pope Day. No more indulgences and all that nonsense. Anyway, hope you had a great one and hope you stayed safe and all that. I want to thank all of you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. If you're a first-time listener, welcome aboard. Glad to have you. If you are, if you're a returning listener or you've listened before and you're back, I really do appreciate you coming back and continuing to listen and making Armed Lutheran Radio a part of your week. And I really want to give a big shout out to and a thank you to all of the members of the Reformation Gun Club who make the show possible through their annual contributions over at Give, Send, Go. If you would like to become a member, get invitations to our monthly online hangouts and access to all of our exclusive content that we have on the website, visit reformationgunclub.com or armedlutheran.us/gunclub, or look for a link in the show notes for this or any of our previous episodes. Today, some of you are probably not going to be happy about this rant. I recognize that, but I didn't start the show intent on saying everything that everyone wants to hear all the time. That's never really been a motivation for me, and sometimes we need to hear things that we don't really want to. And so there's something that's been bugging me, and it's been gnawing at me for a while now, and I just thought I would take a minute to rant this week. This isn't entirely a gun-related issue, but it is sort of tangentially. And I know I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers, so let the ruffling begin. I really don't care. It's an Eighth Commandment issue I want to discuss today, and it just sadly will not go away. And I see it creeping not only into more and more of the woke right, but also into mainstream conservative Christian discourse. And it's troubling, even among Lutherans, who one would think tend to avoid the conspiracy stuff because Eighth Commandment, right? But that seems to be changing, or I'm misreading things very badly. One way or another, I wanted to discuss it today. We did an episode way back when, going back to the Grooveyard of Forgotten Favorites. We had an episode about the alarming rise of anti-Semitism in America. And this was, like I said, yonks ago. Let me look. Yes, November of 2019, during the first Trump administration, episode 195. Anti-Semitism is the world's oldest racism, and its nastiest origins, unfortunately, come from Christianity. Christians have, throughout history, blamed the Jews for the crucifixion of Christ and used that as an excuse for savage pogroms going back a millennia or more. Even Martin Luther, in his last days, succumbed to this oldest form of racism. Back in 2019, though, when we were talking about the rise of anti-Semitism, we were talking about the lunatic left. We were talking about attacks on synagogues by crazy leftists and Islamists. And people who blame the Jews for stuff while complaining at the same time about Islamophobia. That's still going on today. After the attacks of October 7th, 2023, there was an outpouring of hatred for Jews and a concern again about the non-existent Islamophobia in this country. And what we told ourselves at the time was, wow, look at these crazy leftists. At least that's what we were telling ourselves. That's what we were trying to comfort ourselves with, that this was all coming from the left. More and more, though, especially since the re-election of Donald Trump, and accelerated recently, most recently by the assassination of Charlie Kirk, it's coming more and more from the right. Now, I'm not blaming Donald Trump or Charlie Kirk for any of this. I'm saying that those two events have sort of created some sort of weird permission structure that allows all kinds of vile nonsense to percolate from the dark corners of the right. The same alt-right that marched in Charlottesville and spawned that whole fine people hoax that Donald Trump had to fight for the entire first term of his presidency. Those folks seem a little bolder now. And you've got people like Candace Owens and Daryl Cooper and Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson and others routinely trafficking in anti-Western and anti-Jewish tropes and conspiracy theories. And it's not just that group of lunatics, it's everyday Americans. It's not just the keffiyeh-wearing idiots on college campuses. That's who we thought it was after October 7th. Those kids who cosplay on college campuses as terrorists. It's mainstream Christians doing it. And it cloaks itself in a supposed concern about foreign aid. And it's kind of like the cloaking device used by Klingons in Star Trek. Now you see them, now you don't. They come out, pop out and attack, post something that can be construed as racist or anti-Semitic, and then disappear into the ether. No. Just talking about foreign aid. Or, I hate Zionism, but I don't hate Jews. Sure you don't. Sure. Look, there's a side of the Christian right, this idiotic millenarian idea that somehow the modern state of Israel is the chosen people of God still. It's not helping things. A lot of people on the right hold this bogus belief. Ted Cruz is one of these people. People who are advisors, unfortunately, of President Trump. The idea is that we have to support Israel because the Bible says Israel is God's chosen people, and that's completely and totally false. That is total BS. The Israel that God refers to in the Bible is a people, his people, not a nation state. Now, I could argue with you and make the argument that it is in our national interest to support Israel. But not because of this awful reading of Bible prophecy. And it's funny, the same people who I will see enthusiastically justifying the Crusades to defend the Holy Land from the scourge of Islam, today are fine with the idea of defunding Israel and allowing it to die at the hands of Islam. The only democratic, pluralistic society in the Middle East, in a sea of Islamic shitholes, tiny little Israel is the only free and open society in that region of the world. And it happens to be where all the holiest sites in Christianity are. Unless you're one of these nutty LDS people and thinks that Brigham Young was some kind of prophet. Anyway, the only state in that region where Jews and Christians and Muslims are all free to worship together is Israel. So to me, the same rationale for the Crusades, at least the first three, I guess, is why we should is part of why we should support the defense of Israel. The places where Jesus lived and walked and preached and healed and died and was buried and rose again is there. And all that disappears if not for the modern state of Israel. But I digress. Getting a little off track, as is my wont. Anyway, I keep seeing, and I just saw this past week, a post on social media by a guy who calls himself a Christian and a Lutheran to beat all, claiming that the Jews are to blame for Charlie Kirk's assassination. And basically that the U.S. government is somehow captive to some kind of Jew conspiracy. All this was apparently emboldened by text messages shared by that moron, Candace Owens, these were messages from Charlie Kirk before his death, where he was complaining about a falling out that he had with some unnamed Jewish donors. They were unhappy with Charlie Kirk's unwillingness to disinvite Tucker Carlson from one of the TPUSA events, which I would argue you probably should do anyway. He's a complete loon and a moron. But Charlie Kirk has more grace than I've got. And he wasn't going to disinvite him because he considered Tucker a friend. Charlie even joked in that same text string thread that to spite them, he might invite Candace. What does that tell you? He knows that she's perceived as a Jew hater. And she is. Notice, though, that he didn't invite her to speak. That, I think, is telling. He knew. Too many on the right, though. Too many on the right are mystified by all this and still think she's... Anyway. Back on track, Lloyd. Focus. So because Charlie Kirk has this falling out with some unnamed Jewish donor, the Mossad must have come and assassinated him. The Israeli government killed a man who was a professed supporter of Israel and its right to exist and its right to defend itself after October 7th, simply because he would not disinvite Tucker Carlson. Israel, surrounded by enemies, so dependent on America for its survival, would risk all of that support to kill Charlie Kirk because he allowed Tucker Carlson to speak at a TPUSA event. Do you hear how stupid that sounds? Utterly ridiculous. It's insane. And if you're one of those people who believes that, I don't know what to say. Please seek the help of a competent mental health professional. Maybe a priest or your pastor. But when you call these people out, they immediately fall back on, like I was saying earlier, the Klingon cloaking shield thing. Oh, no. Just because I don't support foreign aid to Israel doesn't mean I'm an anti-Semite. I hate Zionism, see, just not the Jews. I hate Islam too, honest. You realize how that sounds? See, my thing when people come back with this, oh no, it's just about foreign aid argument, consider that we're sending foreign aid to places like Sudan, Ethiopia, Saudi, Afghanistan, still Yemen, Iraq, Turkey, Jordan, Gaza. the Palestinian Authority, Gaza, which is basically Hamas, or Egypt. But that doesn't get you all worked up like aid to Israel does for some reason. Why is that, I wonder? Maybe deep down, you hate the Jews, is my suspicion. You get worked up about Ukraine, and I get it. Because there's a lot of shenanigans going on in Ukraine with Biden. I get it. But a lot of those criticisms that I've seen over the years, not all of them, but a fair number, seem to focus on the Jews because Zelensky's Jewish. And then if you go and you look at some of the things that these people post, and then you dig a little deeper and you look at the things they've posted in the past, don't be surprised if you find a swastika, because you probably will. For example, a so-called Christian, a man who claimed to be a Lutheran, posted an actual neo-Nazi poster on his public thread, on his public social media, and then fell back on I don't hate the Jews. It was a poster of a knight in armor, like a medieval knight, carrying a flag and impaling a stereotypical Jew with it, complete with the hat and the yarmulke and the clothing and all that stuff, the hair and the beard, impaling him with a Nazi flag. And then, oh no, I just oppose foreign aid. I'm sorry, but you can't hide behind your supposed opposition to foreign aid and then spend your day sharing Nazi propaganda. I'm sorry, you're not a Christian, you're a Nazi. And I wish I saw half of the energy spent opposing trans ideology or women's ordination or gay marriage or the prosperity gospel heretics that are in Trump's inner circle or the LDS and other cults like that are just straight up heretics. Just half that energy that you spend on the conspiracy theories against Israel and your supposed hatred of Zionism. Now look, I am all for scrutinizing foreign aid. If that aid is not furthering our national security or our economic interests, then we should cut every penny of it. That's my opinion. But unlike people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who don't seem to get this, we do have national security and economic interests in this globalized world now. We can't just be America only. America first and America only are very different. America only is stupid. America first makes total sense. We used to laugh at Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert because they were just stupid and vapid idiots, totally unserious people. But she's at the forefront of this American isolationist talk. Because what happens if America withdraws from the world and isolates itself and says, we're not spending any money anywhere, we're not investing in any allies? Who do you think is going to fill that void? And what is going to happen to your Amazon shipment? What is going to happen to the cost of everything when the control of the high seas, when the control of trade around the world falls into the hands of the Chinese? And what do you think happens if Israel falls? Not only do we lose all access to all of the holy sites, where do you think the jihadists are going to turn their attention next? Remember, the Arab world hates Israel as the little Satan. The United States, we are the great Satan. Once they wipe Israel off the map from the river to the sea, who do you think they're going to target next? And we won't have Israel's military assistance to be on the front line of that fight. Anyway, again, digressing. But claiming you're just against foreign aid while solely focusing on the aid that is given to Israel is a little disingenuous in my opinion. I don't recall you complaining so loudly, or at all, to be honest, about how we're under the sway of the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan, one of the countries that is on the top 10 list of countries that receive aid from the United States, or the Democratic Republic of Congo, or Ethiopia. This past week, Senator Massey from Kentucky, a man whom I like and yet am greatly annoyed by in equal measure. I'm not crazy about the unprincipled libertarianism wing of our party, the Republican Party. But he tweeted that Israel has public funding for they publicly fund abortions. So why are we sending them money? It's a strange question. It implies somehow that we, taxpayers, are funding abortions in Israel because we send them foreign aid, which we're not. And Massey knows that. But the question betrays a little bit, I think, of his own anti-Semitism. He is trying to get you, pro-lifers, all jazzed up against support for the Jewish state because of their internal domestic policy about abortion. It's an odd non sequitur, in my opinion. Is foreign aid really contingent on the abortion policies of foreign nations? We ought to consider it, sure. But there's a lot more to it than that. And he knows this. You know, to be honest, we have we have taxpayer funded abortion in this country. Abortion is legal and taxpayer funded in many cases in this country. So why all the focus on Israel? Well, because it's fashionable to hate the Jews. And posing a question like that helps Senator Massey appeal to certain segments of the right who are conservative on abortion rights or pro-life. So they will agree with him on cutting aid to Israel. Did you know Yemen is one of the top 10 recipients of U.S. foreign aid? And yet they fire rockets at Israel and at our cargo ships in the Red Sea and the Straits of Hormuz. Do you know that? Do you know Nigeria is one of the top 10 countries, top 10 recipients of U.S. foreign aid? Do you know there's a genocide against Christians going on in Nigeria? And yet I don't hear Senator Massey wondering about why we're sending money to Nigeria. It's only because there's Jews. While we're busy smearing the Jews for killing Charlie Kirk, we're mostly silent when it comes to things like the genocide, the actual genocide against Christians in Nigeria. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that's probably because some of the same people who hate Israel, some of those same people who hate Israel only really care about white Christians. That'd be my guess. If your social media feed is filled with anti-Israel, arguably anti-Semitic propaganda, or maybe even straight up Nazi propaganda and imagery, it's not a stretch to suggest that you probably don't care about the darkies either. In 2023, the most recent year that I've found numbers for, only $8.2 billion was given in direct military aid to all countries combined, and $3.3 billion of that went to Israel. That was during a time when Israel's fighting a multi-front war against Islam, a genocidal Islamic front. Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, all backed by Iran. And most of that aid that we provide, the military aid that we provide, is part of a program where we just don't give them cash. We broker sales of military equipment. So those foreign countries like Ukraine, like Israel and others, they use that aid to buy military equipment made in and sold by American companies, directly benefiting the American economy and American workers. But for some reason, we seem to think we're just throwing money. It's not like Barack Obama, who sent pallets of cash to Iran in the middle of the night. We actually require our allies to buy stuff from the United States. And while we're up in arms about the Jews, nobody complained nearly as loudly as we spend millions of dollars on, I don't know, transgender operas in Colombia, or an Arabic version of Sesame Street in Iraq, or sex changes in Guatemala, or transgender comic books in Peru, or tourism in Egypt, personalized contraceptives in third world countries, whatever that means. I have no idea what that is. We're putting people's names on their condoms. I don't know. That's bizarre. Agricultural aid to the Taliban. But no, we're big mad at the Jews because the Jews have space lasers and they control the weather. So if you're not equally pissed off about that stuff, and you're spending all your time complaining about the Jews and looking for conspiracy theories about how they're controlling the government and how they killed Charlie Kirk, spare me your fiscal conservatism because you're lying. So in 2023, we sent $3.3 billion to Israel, as I said earlier. Remember, we have a $4 trillion budget, which is absolutely insane, but that's a completely different discussion. So what we're talking about here and what everyone is up in arms about is 0.05% of the total U.S. budget. Not even 1%, 1/2, not even, well, it's 5/100ths of a percentage point. And again, I can argue that this somehow this money serves our strategic interests. I can make that argument. Unlike the millions that we spent domestically on so-called small businesses, some of which went to people like Post Malone to make them even richer, or the 3 times that much money that we spent on resettling illegal immigrants, over $10 billion spent on people who came to this country illegally. Twice as much as we spent on Israel, $7.5 billion on electric vehicle charging stations. How many were actually built? About a dozen. We spent millions on something called resilient neighborhoods in Gaza. In reality, that money went to buy weapons and build terror tunnels to protect Hamas. But we're not bent about that like we are about Israel. Your taxpayer money went to build the rockets and the tunnels that were used to murder 1,200 Jews and capture over 250 hostages, many of them Americans, on October 7th, 2023. Millions spent on diversity and inclusion scholarships in Burma. Anybody here up in arms about the nefarious Burmese conspiracies? How about biodiversity programs in Liberia? How about building inclusive and diverse workforces in Egypt in Egypt. And some of you right now are probably saying, but Lloyd, I did complain about those things. I have complained about them. Fine, sure you did. But the vitriol that I keep seeing seems to be reserved for only one recipient of our aid, almost exclusively. You may have said, I don't like government waste. I agree with you. But were you up in arms and ranting about nefarious Gazan conspiracies about Peruvian weather-changing technology or Egyptian space lasers back in 2023? No, you weren't. See, if you complain about the money we send to foreign countries, that's fine. And we should be scrutinizing all the aid that we give. All of it. Every penny that we spend, foreign and domestic. But it seems like the scrutiny that gets people really agitated the most is reserved for one country and one people almost exclusively, and that is the Jewish state, the only Jewish state, and the Jewish people. We're not posting veiled racist tropes about the Burmese or the Jordanians or Peruvians. We may not like the spending, but we're not up in arms about it and accusing the American government of being in the pocket of Israel. You really think that Donald Trump is in the pocket of Israel? Really? Look, I'm not advocating for or against aid to Israel here. Like I said earlier, I disagree with those of you who may think that not supporting Israel, we should not be supporting them at all. I disagree entirely with that. I'm not here to make that argument, however. I'm not keen on standing back and watching as the Islamic world swallows the only functioning democracy in the Middle East. Kind of like how we stood back and watched as the Crusader states fell in the 14th century. But I also do not see a Jew hiding behind every bush or under every bed. If the U.S. were to decide tomorrow to pull all of its foreign aid, fine, as long as it's for the right reasons and we're consistent about it. I may not agree, but fine. I can make the argument for cutting off funding to Israel based on fiscal concerns, even though I disagree. But I keep seeing this disproportionate hatred for Israel cloaked in the argument that you're just against foreign aid, or even worse, in the case of people like Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens, it's the government is in the pocket of the Israelis. It's Bibi Netanyahu that's controlling things, pulling the strings. Like Donald Trump is now supposedly so feeble-minded that, of course, it is the Jews we're talking about here, right? I mean, they control everything. So why wouldn't they control Donald Trump? But spare me all this conspiracy theory crap. If you can't provide me some evidence, then just stop. I'm tired of the conspiracy theories. Yes, some conspiracy theories do turn out to be true. COVID really kind of pointed that out. The way the government lied to us during COVID has obviously contributed very heavily to the distrust that we have for government in this country. But I personally am sick of this. We elected these people who are currently in office. We were perfectly happy to see them win, to be nominated and confirmed, people like Kash Patel, people like Dan Bongino. So now, suddenly, the Jews are controlling everything and we're going to turn against them for some reason. At some point, you have to take the old Ronald Reagan line, that is, trust but verify. Those of you who are old enough to remember perestroika and our sort of détente with the Soviets between Gorbachev and Reagan was like, trust but verify. We trust you to disarm. We trust you to cut back on your nuclear weapons, but we want to verify and make sure that's correct. To me, it seems you kind of have to do that here. I trust. I'm not so suspicious of everything that the government does that I'm going to automatically throw it out or question it out of hand simply because the Jews are involved. I don't trust the government implicitly, but unless you can provide me some proof, and if all you got is speculation, you're just talking out the side of your neck. We always advocate for waiting for the evidence when it comes to things like mass shootings. No. Don't speculate. Let's wait. Remember the 72-hour rule? We're way past 72 hours. We still don't have any of this evidence of big government Jewish conspiracies, but we're still doing this crap. We're very quick to jump on the anti-Israel conspiracies when there's simply no evidence for it. If the FBI says the shooter was X, fine with me. If the preponderance of evidence points to X, fine. Occam's razor, if it points me to X, the idea that the simplest explanation is probably the right one. Remember, this has been my bugaboo for years. You're going to tell me that we have this vast Jewish conspiracy against the United States or to control the United States when it involves all these thousands of people, when there's a simple explanation that actually makes a lot more sense right in front of us. We're going to throw that out, but we're going to go diving after Jewish conspiracies. That tells me more about you than it does about the evidence. If everything I think about this right now turns out not to be true, fine. I'll wait and see. In the meantime, I'm not going online to foment conspiracies and to share nonsense. I'm not giving a minute of my time to people like Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens or Nick Fuentes. I'm definitely not going to be sharing their content. I don't think they should be censored or that they shouldn't be allowed online. I have nothing, free speech, right? First Amendment, no problem with it. But I have a problem when people are platforming the nonsense that they spew. People that should know better. People who are making bank off the murder of a man we all claim to admire. I'm not going to get riled up in that stuff or give a minute of my time to it. I've spent 30 minutes of it tonight going on about it because it's driving me crazy, because you should not, as a Christian, be doing this either. The 8th commandment is pretty clear on this. If you went through confirmation, you remember 8th commandment. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. What does this mean? We should fear and love God so that we don't tell lies about our neighbors, betray or slander them, or destroy their reputations. Instead, we are to come to their defense, speak well of them, and interpret everything that they do in the best possible light. Or, as some older texts would say, put the best construction on everything, which is why my most recent book is called The Best Construction. Go check it out now. Signed copy still available. The 8th commandment doesn't just apply to testifying falsely in court. It's about gossip, which ultimately is what conspiracy theories are, because they divide people and they create hatred. So my suggestion to you, to those of you who have not turned me off yet and are still listening, before you go sharing the BS about Jewish conspiracies and how Charlie Kirk was killed by AIPAC and the shooter was just a patsy because obviously it was clearly the Mossad. Before you go sharing that stuff, maybe consider the 8th commandment for a moment. Maybe take a step back and ask yourself, does any of this make sense? Maybe pray about it for a moment before you go sharing it. In all seriousness, pray, Lord, am I sharing this stuff because I really believe it? Because it's convincing and because I really think it's true? Or is there some other underlying sin that I need to be conscious of? That's what I hope all of you will do. And it doesn't matter whether it's about this or anything else. Consider the 8th commandment before you go sharing stuff online. And especially when it comes to stuff that can be construed as racist. That's all I got for today. I got it off my chest. If you have any comments or any questions, if you disagree with me wholeheartedly, if you buy into all of this stuff and want to try to convince me otherwise, please don't. I don't want to hear it. And I'll pray for you. But until I see better evidence, I'm not buying it. Because to me, it just looks like a bunch of grifters who are making money off of selling, getting eyeballs glued to their content by telling the craziest crap. And I just hope you will take a minute and be more discerning before you buy into it and start sharing it online. So anyway, I feel better now. I hope you had a great day. I hope your Reformation Day was awesome. And you gave out some Reformation. You had the 95 Reese's nailed to your door. If not, why not? Please explain. If you dressed up as Martin Luther or some other character from the Reformation, let me know. Send me pictures. I'd love to see it. Visit our feedback page, armedlutheran.us/feedback. Leave a comment or a question on the Facebook page or on the YouTube channel. Love to hear from you. And I really do appreciate you. For those of you who didn't get mad and turn me off, those of you who are still listening at this point, I do very much appreciate you. And I hope you will come back for episode 466 next week. Until then, keep shooting, keep praying. We'll talk to you next time.
For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. Check out the Facebook page, The Armed Lutheran, or join our Facebook group, Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio. If you like what you hear, please leave us a comment on our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback or a review on iTunes and let us know what you think. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio.